Some women have been known to carry around these mummified fetuses for 40 years, totally unaware. What is a disturbing fact you wish you could unlearn? Manatees have vaginas that are the most anatomically similar to humans. Manatees may also be the inspiration for myths about mermaids, beautiful half-fish women that lured sailors to their deaths. Connecting those dots have been mentally scarring. Surgeons used to operate on infants without anesthesia, including open-heart surgery. They have stopped this, however. In the 1980s, I had ear surgery to put tubes into my ears as a young child. My parental guardian opted to not use anesthesia as she was worried I would become addicted to drugs later in life. The single most painful moment of my life. It felt like sub-zero ice picks were digging into my ear. It was so painful I had an out-of-body experience. Still did drugs later on too, so that didn't really work out at all. Often people that fracture their tibia, big shin bone, but not their fibula, thin shin bone, think they're okay to stand up, and when they put weight through that leg then the fibula breaks too. I was a lot happier before I knew that tonsil stones were a thing. As a kid I never knew what those stinky rocks that I would cough up were when I had bad allergies. As an adult I asked my dentist and she pulled out the size of a pea. I hate them so much. I asked my doctor what can be done, and he said they would have to remove my tonsils. That a dolphin committed suicide after falling in love with its handler that used to jerk the dolphin off. They also lived together in an otherwise normal house that was half flooded on the first floor. Also, this was all part of a project where NASA was giving LSD to dolphins to teach them to speak English. From what I remember they were even partially successful. It takes 3 full rotations to remove the human head because of the skin's elasticity. It's pretty handy to know if you're a novelist. There's nothing like a murder story with a big twist. That tumors can grow teeth. I prefer to call them children, but okay. There are corpses on Mount Everest which are used as waypoints. Hey look! There is no limbs, Derek. I guess we're going the right way. One of the bodies up there is due to a climber tearing her suit and exposing her to the cold wind. I even remember reading a number of deaths were from people taking a rest on the descent, and simply not being able to get back up again. Jeffrey Dahmer drilled a hole into some victims' skulls and tried pouring different toxic liquids into the hole. He was trying to make a sex slave that could eat and drink but could in no way fight back or escape. The worst fact is that victims might survive the first hole with all brain function intact and live long enough to be fully aware they were going to get a second or third hole drilled. One of the victims managed to escape, the police were called, and somehow the police turned the 14-year-old victim back over to Dahmer. Why am I willingly learning all the facts that people wish to unlearn? Any details about the toy box killer's ways of torturing his victims? The guy was a serial just leave it at that. Some of the survivors say he wasn't the only person who assaulted them and they could hear a crowd cheering while they were being so that means that there are people who were involved who were not caught. He would put on shows for his friends, generally by allowing his dogs to use the women. There is a chance you might fall in a sleep paralysis-like state when under anesthesia. Meaning you'll feel your surgery while being unable to move. I've woken up twice under anesthesia and the second time was before my procedure. I heard the doctor and nurse arguing about whether or not to go ahead with it because my heart rate suddenly skyrocketed and my nurse was insistent I was awake. The next day, my entire body was sore from trying to scream. There is a phenomenon known as stone baby, where a fetus dies and doesn't get absorbed by the body, so it calcifies inside the mother's abdomen. People have been known to carry around these mummified fetuses for 40 years, totally unaware. Pretty much anything about prions. Know how a slinky can get one kink in it and it's like totally f***ed and then you get another kink in it trying to fix it and before long the whole thing is effed? Well, your brain is full of slinkies made of carbon and nitrogen and oxygen and hydrogen atoms. Quintillions of them. More slinkies in one brain than stars in the entire universe. And when one of them gets kinked, oh man. It just chain reacts until your brain melts. Since the eyes and nose are connected, blood from a nosebleed can travel to your tear ducts and start draining from there. Source: happened to me so I looked it up to make sure I didn't have to go to the doctor. It's all connected back there via sinuses and ducts. I vomited violently once from drinking and a few days later my tear duct got infected. I assume it's because the ducts got clogged some food debris and formed a nidus for infection. Forgive my unscientific terminology, but basically there is a female whale. Maybe a blue whale or a sperm whale? I don't remember the species at all, who was born with some type of genetic defect or physical/anatomical abnormality, something like that, that causes her vocalizations to be produced at a different sound frequency than the other whales of her species. Because of this, the other members of her species cannot hear or perceive her vocalizations, so this poor whale has spent her whole life wandering through the world's oceans all alone, trying unsuccessfully to communicate with other whales who basically don't even know she exists. Someone replied, "Whale 52. Because the frequency is at 52 Hz, which is higher than any of the other whales. I think I read somewhere that others have recently been found that communicated that frequency." Someone else replied, "Scientists should just tape a boombox that plays at the right frequency to her." Fixed. "My mom told me I have my grandma's nipples." Someone replied, "Well, give them back, that's rude." There was a time in England where you could feed your pet to the lions in a zoo to avoid paying. Most schizophrenics kill themselves during a lucid period. I learned that fact, but I regret the day I understood it. I'm a psychiatrist, MD, and, during medical school, I had the privilege of working at Embry Building as part of my psych rotation. My very last day, I stayed late to check up on a man with schizophrenia who was generally pretty disorganized. When I was questioning him, he seemed more lucid, and he mentioned something about studying literature. Having recently been half an English major in college, I engaged him, and he started rhapsodizing about Faulkner, Tennessee Williams, really insightful comments. Then he moved on to music, jazz especially. I spent an hour after my shift with that man, just listening. I passed an attending when I went to write my notes, told him what had happened, awe and joy in my voice. He informed me that the man was a former professor, had 2 PhDs. He said that many people with severe mental illness are living in 1-2 rooms of a mansion, and once in a while, the lights come on in the rest of the house, and you can see what it once was. And so can they. Maybe someone had already said this, but the fact that most people don't want to be around when their pets are put down. Vets have stories about like 70% of the pets they put down being scared and looking for their humans and not seeing them, and dying and afraid and alone. This haunts me. Every single fact about bedbugs. My friend's old apartment had to get bug bombed at least 5 times. Every time they'd think it was taken care of, and I'd come to spend the night and get eaten alive. For some reason my blood is like ambrosia to bedbugs, even the people who lived there didn't get it as bad as I did. I was the canary in the bedbug coal mine. Years later I had an apartment in the city and I found a single bedbug on the wall and had a full-scale panic attack. Somehow I was lucky and it really was just the one, but I was ready to burn my whole life down. Guy who I worked with when I was 15 turned out to be a convicted child molester. He never touched me, but he was definitely really uncomfortably friendly around me. A Queen of Scotland, if my memory's good, was sentenced to death by beheading. Bear in mind that a beheading was always seen as a quick death. One chop and that's done. She got up to the chopping block and made her prayers. The executioner took 3 swings to properly behead her. I recall reading how she screamed in terror and pain before the second hit cut her voice. I forgot the details of much, but executioners were not flawless in their handling of sentences. Every time you walk into a stinky public bathroom, you are inhaling tiny bits of strange people's shit. Right in your mouth. Parmesan cheese and vomit contain butyric acid and it is responsible for the most distinct aspects of their smells. Also why Hershey's chocolate has its distinctive flavor. There is a type of insomnia that will kill you. Life expectancy is around a year after onset. FFI, fatal familial insomnia. I remember seeing a channel about a guy who suffered from this and it was not hard to see him going slowly insane from watching his videos. And that concludes another chapter of Story. Thank you for listening. Please remember to leave a thumbs up on this video if you liked it and subscribe to support the channel. Click the video on top to watch some of the funniest 911 calls. Don't, under any circumstances, click the video below.